Hi crafty friends, it's Donna here, back with another video for 4 cards using one tiny little stamp. You can find me all over the internets as Donna is playing paper and also on Instagram as DonnaDoll74, and that's where I post most of my cards. Today's feature stamp is called Sketched Flower 3. I'm going to do some ink blending, and to make my job easier, I'm starting with a piece of coloured cardstock. I've chosen this sea glass cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm going to come in from the outside with a couple of colours of ink. I'm starting out with Salty Ocean and blending that in from the sides, leaving a little bit of the original sea glass paper in the centre. Once I've done that, I'm going to come in again with Blueprint Sketch, which is a slightly darker ink, just to really frame this image. Next, I'm going to stamp my image in the middle, in that lightest section, and I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I want to go over this next with Copic colours. And this Memento ink won't smudge with alcohol markers. We have 4 cards to get through today, and so I'm not going to colour this on camera. I have plenty of videos where you can see how I colour a flower. The next thing I'm going to do is to spatter this image, and I'm working with my favourite black, which is the Gansai Tambi black, which is quite opaque, and then also a white gouache. You might also notice that my water container is an old Ferrero Rocher chocolate container. And I have what I think is a very funny reason why I like this container for my paint water. And I'm so glad I found it again. And the reason is, it's square. It absolutely cannot be confused with my teacup and drunk from. Is this a problem for anybody else? Once that paint spatter is all dry, I'm going to add a sentiment, and it comes from an older stamp set called Modern Poppies, and I'm going to use the Happy Birthday. Now, I've previously performed stamp surgery on this Happy Birthday, and it's in 2 parts so that I could mount them one above the other, but it makes no difference. I've cut them with a curve, and so I can easily see how and where to put them back together, so they line up beautifully. I usually do a practice stamp for a longer sentiment, even if I haven't done stamp surgery on it, just to be sure that I've lined it up straight. And once I'm happy with it, then I stamp it onto my precious card panel. I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink because it's a beautiful dark glossy black that will really stand up to the busyness of this panel. And there's our first card done. You might have noticed, if you've been following my blog, that I used a similar technique for a card just a few weeks ago. And here's that card. Isn't the mouse darling? I'll leave a link to this stamp in the box below. I recently made a set of 10 cards using this Rainbow Twirl 2.0 paper pad. And in fact, that was the last cards that I made before this set. And so I still had the leftovers on my crafty space. And so I'm going to use a couple of those now to stamp some parts of this image so that we can make a card with a whole lot of layering and some height to the image. I'm stamping all of these in black ink using the same VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is going to take just a little while to dry on these papers. But once they're dry, I'm going to cut out each of these parts. I'm going to cut the cone, which I've done in the yellow, and then the petals and cone together in one part on that blue and green sheet of paper, and then each of the leaves individually. I'm cutting right on that black line, and then I'm going to go in with my Memento Tuxedo Black marker and just cover around the edges so that any white cardstock is hidden. It gives a really nice professional looking result. Next, I'm going to re-stamp that image onto some white cardstock so that we have those thin stems and the beautiful elements. And I'm going to cut this panel out with a stitched rectangle die. Once again, I'm choosing a sentiment from this Modern Poppy stamp set. This time, a little hello. This hello is available tiny on this Modern Poppy stamp set, or in a Hello Thanks little stamp set as well, and in that case the font is just a smidge bigger. I'm going tiny today. Now this next step is optional depending on how you want to attach your cutout pieces. I want to pop my pieces up with some foam tape for some height, and so I know that I'm going to be able to see the image underneath. So all I'm doing is with a basic pencil, any medium is fine, I'm just adding some colour near the edges that are going to show. So in the case of the leaf, it's all around the leaf, and so I may as well colour the middle. And in the case of these petals, it's the edges of the petals. So you can see I haven't even bothered to colour through to the middle. I'm not going to colour the cone because I'm going to stick the next element down flat to that, and so it doesn't need colouring. I'm still trying to use up this blue fun foam that I found in my crafty space, and so you'll see that feature in the next several videos. I've attached it to each of the flower petals and also to that yellow cone part. The cone of this larger part already has some tape roller adhesive on it, and now I'm just gluing up the fun foam on the petals, and then I'll glue that directly to the page. I'm pressing down on the cone so that that will sit flat, and then allowing the petals to sit up by the height of that fun foam. And then I'm going to add that yellow cone on top with its fun foam so that I have some dimension. As far as the leaves go, I'm going to try to have them sticking flat to the page where they join the stem, and then coming away from the page towards the tip. And so I'm adding my fun foam at the tip end of the leaf, and then adding my roller adhesive to the whole leaf because that stuff is sticky. I'm going to press one end of that leaf flat to the page and let the other end pop up. And this is the result. It's still that same basic little stamp, but I think the dimension gives it a lot of extra life. I'm going to mat that onto a textured piece of card, and I'm creating the texture using the Tulips 3D embossing folder, which just gives the most gorgeous, gorgeous look to the paper behind. Using those watercolour look papers from the Rainbow Twirl collection has really made this card have a bit of a painterly look, although all I used to add the colour was scissors. For the next card, I'm going to use repeat stamping. I often just use a stamping block for repeat stamping, but this image is a little bit bigger, and so I am going to use my MISTI, and I've chosen the regular MISTI, and put the stamp right in the middle of the stamping surface. I'm going to stamp with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and move my cardstock around to cover it with images, all at different angles. You can stamp with the paper sticking out of your MISTI just fine, as long as you're not trying to stamp too close to the edge. And in order to work out where I want the stamp, I'm just almost closing that lid. I often put my thumb between the lid and the base just to stop it from falling shut, and just moving my paper around until I'm happy. I've tried to vary it so that no two flowers are at the same angle, but I didn't quite succeed with this very last corner. And I've coloured this off camera, but you can see on the right hand side there a selection of the types of colours that I used. I'm going to add a sentiment from the Happy Birthday sentiment sheets, and I've cut this down to be smaller than my background panel, and then in a move that's incredibly bold for me, I'm not going to put the panel central. I've decided to put it down in the bottom right hand corner and have the sentiment towards the right hand side. What do you think? Too brave? I'm living life on the edge here. I'm just interviewing a few places for the sentiment before I settle on one that doesn't cover up too much of my colouring. For our last card, we're going to cover everything but the image. I'm going to cut a panel of watercolour paper using the Pink and Main layered circle die. That's exactly the right size for my image. And then I'm going to watercolour around the outside. I'm using those same two colours of distress ink, that is Salty Ocean and blueprint sketch. And the reason for this? I've discovered that when I make a set of cards, I like the cards to all be matchy-matchy with colours. Kind of like having a family photo taken, wearing the same colour t-shirt. Before I lay down any colour, I'm laying down water, being careful not to go inside the image. That way when the colour hits the page, it's not going to have a harsh line where it ends. At the edges, it can just keep flowing off into that water until I have time to get back around to that section. Once the panel's dry, I'm going to construct the card. And I'm layering up some very thin black strips. I just eyeballed cutting these strips. I cut 6 and chose the most similar 4. And I'm just adding some very small glue dots to these rather than a long line of glue. It's still spurted out because they're so thin. Perhaps next time I'd put some double-sided tape on the back first and then cut the strips. I've cut a circle from the Lincoln circle frame die to kind of mirror the circle of my main image and to extend it down into that empty corner of the page. And then I'm just layering those up before adding a few glitter enamel dots and a sentiment from the Happy Birthday sentiment set. And that's the last of today's 4 cards. We've ink blended, watercoloured, Copic coloured, repeat stamped, used texture in the backgrounds, layered up the stamp, all to create 4 different cards using lots of different techniques. I hope you've enjoyed having a think about what one little stamp can do. If you'd like to see more, feel free to like and subscribe. If not, that's fine, just pass on your way. I'll be back soon with another video, and I look forward to sharing with you then. Bye for now.